Hi everyone, welcome back to another live stream here on the Laravel channel with my series Behind Laravel, where I talk to people from the Laravel team about their packages and products. I already talked to Dries, I already talked to Joe, and now I have two more guests from the other side of the world. That's also why we have this time slot today. It's 9 a.m. for me, I believe it's like 5 p.m. for them, but no idea what time it is for you, but welcome you. And let's bring in Tim and Jess, and we're going to talk about Pulse today. Hey Tim, hi Jess, how you doing?
Hey there.
Hello.
All
Doing
good on
great.
your side? So it's the end of your
Definitely.
work day already?
Yeah.
Yes, just
Yeah, indeed. Heading into the afternoon.
Good, I hope it was successful. I'm very happy to have you both here. I think maybe to start this off, maybe can you both give a little introduction, short one about yourself and also what you do at Laravel. Maybe Jess, you want to go first?
and first me. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm Jess Archer. I work on the Laravel team. I mostly do open source stuff. So Laravel Pulse that we'll talk about today, Laravel prompts, and little bits and pieces like the Vite plugin for Laravel, the Laravel Bootcamp. Those are probably the main sorts of things.
Cool.
Hey,
Thanks.
everybody. My name's Tim. I work on the Laravel team. I kind of split my time between open source stuff, so adding new features to the framework. I built Pennant and Precognition, and Jess and I did the Vite plugin together and Pulse together. Work on Forge some of the other time as well, and other products within Laravel.
Nice. Cool. So I'm very glad I have you. It wasn't easy for us to get the right time slot for this, because of the time difference, but I'm really glad we made it. And we can talk about Pulse today because, I feel like it's one of those things that really had a big impact on the Laravel community, and I feel like everybody loves it. And I'm pretty sure everybody here wants to know more about this. But before we dive in, I want to talk about one tiny little thing first. So Tim and I, we met the first time, I think this year, Laracon EU, you're correct? But I remember meeting Jess the first time. Do you remember when we met the first time?
Was it in India?
No, it was not. It was,
Oh,
I think it was Laracon US 2019. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
oh yes, in New York.
In New York, yeah. I was there
Yeah.
because it was my first time I spoke at the Laracon US conference. And I still remember it pretty good because I was in a room and you came to me and were like, hey, Christoph, nice to meet you. And I was like so happy that, I don't know, someone knew me and talked to me because I was still a little bit shy and didn't know too many back then. So I was really happy about this. And that's why I still got stuck in my head. So I wanted to share this with everyone else
Oh, nice.
because this was really nice of you.
And you did a handstand on stage, if I recall correctly.
Laracon
As you
US.
do.
I'm not sure if I did it there. I think I
I
didn't do
can't
it
remember. You do a
at
lot of
this.
handstands on
Yeah, I
stage.
did a lot since then, but this one I was super nervous. And it was New York. It was 900 people. It was super crowded, like the top level people in the crowd around you. So this was really a tough one, and I was really shaking. And I think Justin Jackson was the host,
Yeah.
and this was really a stressful experience. But of course, as always, in the end, it was super nice. I did it. But today is not about me. Today is about you and about Pulse. So maybe Tim, can you give a short introduction about what Pulse is? So I'm not sure if everyone really knows it, but I think they do. But just to be sure, what is Laravel Pulse?
Yeah, for sure. I think the best thing is like our little slogan on the pulse.laravel.com website, which is like real time metrics for your Laravel application. So Pulse has been designed to kind of keep track of problematic places within your app, such as like slow queries, slow outgoing requests, give you kind of a bit of an insight into what's happening in your application, so that you can then like focus in and try and make things better within your application and know where to focus your time and energy. Things like how long jobs process for. Maybe you've got some jobs that you didn't realize were actually taking quite a long time to process. Kind of Pulse helps kind of expose those slow parts of your application to you, and not just what's happened, not just slow things, but also your CPU usage, memory usage, disk usage, just lots of metrics that we felt as a team we wanted to know about our applications that we didn't have a lot of insight into easily without having to set up a lot of manual infrastructure and monitoring. We wanted to be able to, for ourselves and for the Laravel community, to just compose or install something and just have a dashboard, have something that's going to help you understand what's going on with your application and help you, feel the pulse of your application.
Yeah, very well said. And we're going to talk about how easy it is to get installed maybe in a bit. But you also mentioned that it was helpful for ourselves. So maybe let's go back. How did this all start? Was it a project at the beginning just for Laravel itself? Or was it always the idea to make this free for everybody to use, because it is free, which is pretty amazing. Maybe Chas, can you talk about how this all started? And was it your idea? Was it Tim's idea? Was it Taylor's idea or someone else? Tell us about it.
Sure. So Taylor originally came to me with the idea, and he
As
just
always,
said, "Can you
Taylor.
design exactly?" He said, "Can you design a dashboard that shows these metrics, just visually? What would it look like?" And I think he had like 15 kind of metrics he wanted to see. So like the top users hitting the application, the top slowest queries, all this sort of stuff. So I was like, yeah, cool. I can do up a quick design for that. I kind of assumed he was going to like build it. So I did up a design. It wasn't very good. It didn't look anything like what it looks like now. And then he just started asking, and how would we like capture this data, and how would we like efficiently kind of show these metrics and report on them and all this sort of stuff? And so then I'm like, okay, I better go figure this all out. And then it just kind of continued like that. So I kind of I never really felt like it was like assigned. It was just like, I just kept asking to do questions on it. And before you know it, it was like the full-time thing I was working on. So it was definitely Taylor's idea. And like pretty much all of our products, it came about because it was something that we wanted internally. So Taylor wanted it for Forge primarily. And it's one of those things that if we want it, other people probably want it too. So that's kind of how it evolved.
Yeah, cool. It's like always the same. So if you feel like the need for something and you work on this, there's a good chance that a lot of other people will need it as well. So it's always, I believe, the best approach to work on something, not with the idea already creating this big thing, but just making something that helps you, and then maybe it turns into something that now everybody can use for free, which I think is still amazing. So you said you started working on it. When did Tim come in? So was it always the idea to bring someone in because it was a lot of work, or how did this turn into this partnership and this team?
I'm trying to remember now. It was very, very early on. Like I think I'd done like a dashboard mock-up, and I just started to think of some ideas for how we could collect these queries, all using just like purely Redis, because I was so worried about using the database for capturing this sort of information. So it was really early on. Do you remember, Tim, kind of when you got involved in it?
I don't know like what the where it was exactly up to, but yeah, you had like fleshed out a bit of that data capture and like Redis, and you'd gone deep on like the things that you could do with Redis and how you could like bend it to your will to like report on stats like instantly. That was pretty cool. There was definitely some good groundwork there when I came on board.
Cool. So how did it change when Tim came on board? Because I think that's interesting, because we tend to work a lot on our own on products. But when you team up, I feel like the dynamic and everything is immediately different. So how did you work together? Was it always like you check out this, I check out this? Had you like daily meetings? Did you work together? Did you do pair programming? So tell us more about this. Maybe Chas now again.
Sure. So I think like with pretty much anything, if I'm working on something, I tend to talk to Tim about it anyway, even if he's not like directly assigned to it. It's always good to have someone else to
Yeah.
just like talk through an idea and get like other input from. I always say that like I have pretty good ideas and Tim has pretty good ideas, but when we like combine them together, we come up with this like new idea that we probably couldn't have come up with on our own. So Tim would have been involved in it even before he was like officially involved with it, if you know what I
Yeah.
mean. But I guess like once we kind of started with it kind of officially, I guess, we tend to like hang out all day mostly on like a video call.
Oh,
I
really?
can't remember what we were using back then, but we spend the majority of the day just on a video chat. Often, even if we're working on completely different things, we just kind of have it in the background. We'll just be on mute, listening to music, whatever. But it's kind of our way of being like in the office and just having someone else there. You know, you kind of feel like you've got teammates, and then you can kind of share quick wins, ask quick questions. It's just kind of just a nice way to kind of feel not so isolated when we are just in our
Yeah.
home offices. So yeah, we kind of work through that. We do, I wouldn't say we do like proper pair programming in like the traditional sense where like we control each other's computers, but we do a lot of screen sharing where whoever's sharing the screen is like driving and the other person is kind of helping through it and like looking things up and making suggestions and all that sort of stuff. So it's, in that sense, I guess it is kind of pair programming, but yeah, we never bother with the remote control stuff. I don't know why.
But it sounds like a pretty good idea to having this video call, like most of your work day just open. But does it also happen that you're like quiet for 1 or 2 hours and then someone says and you're like almost falling off your chair because you forgot that Tim is there?
I think we probably blare music most of the time anyway, so it's like
Okay.
sometimes like, oh, was that Jess? Did I just hear Jess, or is that my music? I'm not sure. I really like having the video call open because it really lowers the friction to be able to be like, hey, Jess, just got a quick question
Yeah.
for you that would take 2 seconds if we have a conversation, and it will take 2 hours if I try and type it out to you. Because so it's nice to just be able to like mute my thing and be like, hey, Jess, you got a sec? And just like, we're just there, you know, Jess will finish up what she's doing and we'll just jump on a thing, solve the problem, get back to what we're doing. It's or we end up going down like this big rabbit hole together and we're like, you know, learn something completely new by the end of it. And we're like, we should PR something to Laravel, or we should build this thing because of that. So it's always really useful.
I
think
love that.
we-
Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, we often try and find ways where we can work on separate pieces as well that are kind of like related to it. So it's like, you do this bit, I'll do this bit. But for some bits where it's like really kind of architectural and there's just a lot of kind of decisions to be made, those are the times where I think we'll kind of both focus on the same problem on the same screen sort of thing. But once we've kind of got like a path forward, then it's like we kind of divide and conquer.
Yeah. I really love the idea. So it also feels like you're kind of a good dream team, so working really well together. So I think it's really insightful for a lot of people because we all tend to work pretty much alone in our offices and maybe talk just a couple of times a day with someone else. Or for me, it's also difficult because I have to record and edit a lot. So I don't have... I couldn't have a video channel open with anyone else because there's so much, or I think maybe I should try it, but it's different with my work, I guess. But I feel like it's a good idea for everyone. And as you said, like you can directly say, and because if you think about, should I ask him or her about this? Is this a stupid question? Or maybe I can figure it myself, or maybe you write it down and then it takes double or more time than what it could have.
There's so many times where it would be quicker to just ask someone else if they already kind of know about it rather than trying to like bash it out yourself.
Yeah.
So
I feel
and there's times where some of my favorite times is like when I'll be like in something and I know I'm in a rabbit hole I shouldn't be in. Like I was trying to like change the light bulb and next thing you know, I'm like changing the oil in my car and I'm like, how did I get here? So it's like those kind of moments. And my favorite ones are when I'll just put my microphone on and be like, Jess, tell me to get out of this rabbit hole. And she'll be like, all right, let's jump on a pair. Let's get you back onto like whatever you were doing. Like, I love those moments where it's like, I just need a quick save. Just come save me for a second.
I mean,
it does help to have, that like accountability, right? Like sometimes when you can feel that you're procrastinating and you just want someone else to kind of just be accountable to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's also funny because you mentioned it. I also always know myself when I'm in this rabbit hole. I know it, but I'm still, yeah, sometimes don't want to ask, just want to figure it out myself, or maybe sometimes I just want to feel the pain myself and cry myself to sleep in
Yeah.
this rabbit hole. But yeah, I really like how you explained this.
It's interesting
Yeah, it's
because
good.
there's so many like jobs where people work in teams. Like most kind of trades, like electricians and all that, they tend to go out with like an
Yeah,
apprentice or two people. Like police officers work in teams. All these different things. It's like generally two people because I find that if you're on your own, you can get in your own head too much. Whereas if you've got
yeah,
one other person, and I find like that's like the magic number often as well, is like just that one extra person where it's not a whole lot of extra communication that has to happen. Um, so yeah, I would definitely recommend if you can have like a coding buddy.
yeah.
It's a good
So
time.
everyone else out there, if you haven't a coding buddy yet, think about it. Pretty sure there are others out there that would love to join with you. So think about this. And I feel like for me, it's also like one of the few things that I really miss from working at a company in the office, where I could just turn around, hey, and talk to my other developers, say, hey, can you take a look at this? And then you, talk about this, because this makes really a big difference. So I think that's the only thing where it's really different than working from home when you're alone, because of course there are a lot of advantages here, but yeah, talking to others is something that is very helpful.
Yeah.
Okay, back to Pulse. Let's talk about a little bit about data, because we have to collect data in order to show what's on the dashboard. And I know it, you already shared it in your talk, Jess at Laracon EU, that this was pretty difficult. Can we talk about this a little bit? So I guess the first idea was to just try it out, put everything in database, I don't know, MySQL, and see if this is performant, does this work, or how did this start, and where did you reach the first pain points where you felt like, okay, this is something we have to do way differently than we thought?
So originally, I didn't want to use the database at all.
Oh, okay.
I have memories of like WordPress sites back in the day where there was this like analytics plugin you could install in WordPress, and it would do like a database insert on every single request, and it would just take down WordPress sites because it was just like way too much information to chuck in a database.
Yeah.
So I kind of had that burned into my head that like you shouldn't do an insert on like a GET request, basically. So I was like, okay, can't do that. Rule that out. So what else can we do? Now we had this limitation where we wanted it to be self-hosted, so it has to use tools that people have available. So Redis seemed like a pretty accessible tool. A lot of people have it installed. Forge installs it for you. So it's like, okay, Redis is really fast. It's going to be amazing. It's got all these different data structures for capturing data. So like sorted sets, that's like a regular set, but every member can have a score. So it's like, this is perfect. We're doing a lot of this sort of stuff. And so I built a proof of concept for it. The only problem with Redis, well, there's a few problems, but the main one that kind of made it like a blocker is that there's no way to like query by time period. So if you've got like a sorted set full of data and you only want to see the top 10 slowest requests for the past hour from now, and if you're running this query every 10 seconds because the dashboard's polling, it's this like sliding window. And so there's no way in Redis to really do that. If you break it up into like buckets and have like an hour's worth, then you could show, the stats from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. You could do all that. But if you want to have this like rolling window that's like down to the second accuracy, there's not really any way to do it. You can have like smaller buckets and then like union them together, but there's still kind of this area where these buckets don't quite fit in the window. So you've got this bucket on the end that's like, if you include it in the query, then it'll be including data from outside of it. But if you exclude it, you'll be missing data. And for anything like the count charts, like how like the count of users hitting your application, if we did that approach, every minute those counts would like drop suddenly as one bucket drops off and then build back up over the minute while the new bucket fills up.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the first thing. We kind of had to rule that one out. And that's when we were like, okay, well, how bad can a MySQL database really be. So Tim, I mean, I feel like I've chatted for ages. Tim, you know the whole database story side of things. Do you want to talk about that bit?
Well, actually, I just want to loop back to Redis for just half a second and say Redis is absolutely amazing, as Jess said. And like, Jess went deep on like pushing this thing to try and do, because even when it was like, oh, we can't really do this with Redis, that didn't stop Jess from like trying to bend it to her will to make it work. Like, oh man, yeah, there was some mad stuff happening there. Definitely mad scientist stuff. Yeah, so then I guess as far as like, so we realized that, well, we just kind of came to the conclusion that we couldn't really do the like a good sliding window with Redis. So then we were looking into doing sliding window stuff with the database, and it's like, okay, well, with MySQL you can just have a timestamp column, and we can just say, where the timestamp is an hour ago till now. So life's good. We can do a sliding window, right? Like we'll just, every time we run the query, we'll get an hour's worth of data and it'll be perfect and up to date. But once you throw a lot of data at it and you're doing group bys and you're doing filtering on things, and at some point, like MySQL, it just takes, once you're like aggregating on stuff, it just takes time. And we went really hard on trying to like craft amazing indexes to make it really, really fast, to be able to just do that, because we just wanted to we wanted to keep every request as a single row and be able to like calculate stuff based on that. And we got pretty far. We learned a lot about databases, a lot about indexes, and we got our brains into like, this is how databases work mode. We got pretty far with that, but at some point it continued to feel like we were doing it wrong, and we weren't happy with it. Like we got the response times down to like 2 seconds, but like that's still a long time and kind of sucks.
And there were still queries that would time out when we ran it with the amount of data that Forge has. Mm-hmm. So we installed the package on Forge very early on so that we would be capturing like real data, and Forge gets about 20 requests per second. So it's about 12 million per week, which I think works out at about 20 requests per second. And so there were certain queries where if we were doing the slow, like we wanted to get the top 10 slow queries, we could do some tricks. Like when the query happened, if it was slow, or let's say the request, we could have a flag in the database that's just true or false. Is this slow? So that instead of doing a where duration is greater than or equal to, we can just say where slow is equal to true. And that improved the performance because we could create an index that let MySQL just like get rid of all the rows that aren't relevant. But one of the queries that just would time out on Forge was just getting the top 10 users hitting the application with the count of requests they were making. And the reason for that is because we've got, I don't know how many users we've got in Forge, but in any given week, there's at least 10,000 active users. And so to get the top 10, you've got to do the calculations for all 10,000 of them to sort them and then limit to just the top 10. And that was the one that would just time out when we ran that on Forge, and no indexes or anything. We're going to solve that one.
No. And then we kind of moved to this hybrid of like, oh, well, for these particular ones, we brought Redis back into the story and we did something where, it was something mad where like, we would like keep a counter, and then as stuff was like shifting out of the window, we would decrement the counter, and then as they were coming back in, we would increment. And like, so now we had this like kind of in MySQL, kind of in Redis thing, which would have been fine, but again, it didn't feel super solid. It didn't feel like something we really wanted to like ship out the door. It worked, and I think we ended up getting that one pretty quick because it was all just happening in Redis again, but it still just didn't all feel quite cohesive as we wanted it to.
And that one worked well if it was aggregating a count, so the number of requests someone has made, for example. It doesn't work well for doing what's the duration of the slowest one, which is basically what's the maximum duration. Because when an entry falls outside of the window and you want to remove its effect from the aggregate, when it's a count, it's easy. You just decrement it. But when you want to remove a duration, and if that one was the current slowest one, how do you know what the next slowest one should be? Like, what do you update that value to? So that kind of, would have worked for some things, but not for all things.
So when you were talking about this situation, was it like really big pain points already in this process, or was it also just a few things that you had to figure out somehow, or was this really a pain point in a way where you thought like, oh my God, I'm not sure if we can do this? Did you have these thoughts?
It's definitely a bit stressful. We hadn't like announced anything publicly, so if it just turned out to be not feasible, then we hadn't committed to it. But we had spent a lot of time on it, and Laravel's a pretty small business. We don't want to be wasting money. So yeah, I guess like I was mostly worried about like letting Taylor down. That was probably the scary thing.
And it did feel like, it felt like each time we were moving the needle, but there was never this big unlock of like feeling like, yeah, we got this. Like we're on the right track now. It felt a lot like, especially with crafting the indexes, because as much as like we learn about indexes and how that all kind of happens under the tree and how to optimize that, there was still like, we still need to like test the index against the thing and like make sure we've got enough data and it just never, it felt a little bit like whack-a-mole, which I think was a good smell to be like, we haven't kind of worked something out here. Like this isn't the right answer.
Okay, so I think what's also important to mention here, so we're talking about collecting data, but we're not collecting like all the data there is. So it was always important that it still is fast. So we're not collecting all the information that we get from every request, from everything that's happening. And I think it's also a good idea to talk a little bit about the difference to Telescope, which is also a package which we have in Laravel. So Jess, what are the differences and what are the initial thoughts for Puls, what it should be and what it shouldn't be?
Sure. So Telescope was actually probably the other thing that made me scared of using the database. Telescope captures a lot of data about every single request. So every email that's sent, every notification, every database query, and it captures like details about them. Like it captures the whole request body, they're like the response body, all the mail you send, the full email. So Telescope is an amazing tool for doing like local debugging and seeing what's actually happening inside your application. People have run it in production, and I think we have some kind of guidelines on the documentation that if you are going to do it, these are like the things to turn off so that you're kind of just using it to capture like not everything and completely destroy your database. So yeah, it was kind of a thing that was never meant for production, but people wanted to use it in production. So that was probably one of the other things that kind of made Pulse seem like it would be something people would want. But we had to have a different strategy in terms of like not collecting absolutely everything. So every kind of metric we captured is generally just like one number about the thing. So it's like a duration or it's a count. Sometimes we'll collect a duration and a count. There's like kind of two separate metrics. And doing things like only capturing queries if they're over a threshold. So not capturing every single database query, only capturing the ones that are over a threshold. And then enabling things like data sampling. So you could say, oh, only record 10% of my requests, or even 1% if you've got enough traffic where that would still be like a decent sample size. So we did kind of, combined a few things like that together. Yeah,
cool. So would you also say that, so I mean, you tried to make it very fast from the beginning because it is a tool built to be used in production. This was the plan right from the beginning, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think this, is a big challenge because, as you said, with big application, there's a lot of data coming in. And was it difficult to decide what to collect and what not to collect, or was this pretty easy to just say these were the metrics that we want to have because that's also the ones that Taylor said? or were there also ones where you maybe discussed, could we do this, should we do this, or you just left out?
I think we mostly worked towards the bullet points that Taylor sent of just like the metrics, but they were just like some short bullet points, like a small sentence about each sort of one. So we were able to take some license in what we thought that would mean. Like, what would I want to know about slow queries? So I'd want to know, like, what's the time of the slowest one, but also how many of them were there, things like that, and be able to like sort the list. So I can sort by the count of times, like ones that occur the most or the ones that are the slowest. So there were a lot of like smaller details like that that we just kind of played around with and had to see what was possible with the data structure we ended up using to store all of it.
So what did you end up with? So you mentioned Redis, you mentioned MySQL. We know that a lot of things happen during the request. So what was the end result in, you don't have to go super into detail, but what did you end up with using and doing to make it as fast as possible for us?
So I go into a lot more detail on this on the Laracon EU talk, which I also gave for the Laravel Worldwide meetup recently. But to kind of summarize it, it's a combination of what we did with Redis and what we did with MySQL. So when a new metric comes in, we pre-aggregate it into 4 different buckets. So we have 4 different time periods you can view your metrics. You can have 1 hour, 6 hour, 24 hour, and 7 days. So we pre-aggregate it into a bucket that is 1/60th the size of that window. So for the 1 hour window, we put it in a 1 minute bucket, so on and so forth. I think the 7 day one, each bucket is like 2 hours and 48 minutes. So it basically goes into 4 different rows. Plus, we also capture the raw data in a whole separate table. Now, it sounds like a lot, but the data that's captured, as I said, is just like one number about each thing. And there's like kind of like a key that like uniquely defines it that's basically used in the group by. And so what this allowed us to do is for any graphs that we use in the queues card and the CPUs card, we can query purely the aggregated data because we just want to show 60 points on the graph. So we can do a select with no grouping, no aggregating. It's already pre-aggregated using an upsert query. So it's already pre-aggregated. So we can just load it, show it in the graphs. So our graphs went from being one of the slowest things to being basically instantaneous to get the data into those. For the leaderboards, those are a bit trickier. What we ended up doing, and this was kind of this magical unlock that we had one day, was that we would use the buckets, but we would only use all of the buckets that would fit inside the window. So generally 59 of the 60 buckets. And for the bucket at the very like oldest part of the window that doesn't quite fit in, we would then union the buckets together with the raw data, but just for that small little piece. So we'd union together 59 buckets plus raw data to get a single result for each thing. And that ended up taking a 12 million row kind of data set down to about 300,000 rows. So it was like a 98%, I think, decrease in the amount of rows that MySQL would have to read to generate that information. And that made the query go from timing out to not timing out and actually running generally under a second, especially for like the 1 hour time view, super, super fast. It has this interesting thing where at the start of a minute, you'll fit 60 buckets in fine. And then as you work through the minute or whatever the 1/60th of the time period is, it has to use more and more data to fill up that little gap at the end until it reaches where they all line in again. And then it uses less of the data. So technically Pulse actually gets that tiny little bit slower as it progresses through the bucket and then gets quick again. But we kind of chose 60 pretty arbitrarily. It just was a number that looked good for the graphs. But it happened to be a good number where the buckets would get reused enough, but there wasn't too many of them, sort of thing. So yeah, I mean, I hope that makes sense. As I said, I go into a lot more detail in the Worldwide Meetup talk. Do you have anything to add to that, Tim?
I do, but not anything technical. I just want to, because I don't think Jess kind of shared this in the talks, but we kind of like realized this unlock, and I think after the fact we learned that strategy is called, I think it's called BINT, like a binary tree int or something, that windowing thing. Anyway, side note, but we like worked out, hey, this could be a good thing to do. We should do this. And then Jess just like went deep and like rebuilt everything, the entire thing, in like, I don't know how many days, like 3 days or a week or something. I don't know. But Jess just lived on like Red Bull or V. I would come in the mornings and she was just like coding away. And I'm just like, okay, I'm just going to like step back while Jess like does some refactoring here. It was absolutely insane. I don't know how you did it. That was just magical.
So I think the day that we discovered that, I did literally do an all-nighter.
Oh, wow.
And so I was still there the next morning when you came in.
Oh, my God.
It was so funny. You were just so keen to just like get this thing going. It was great.
To give some context to all of this, we had announced it at this point at Laracon AU, and we would like done some of those optimizations we talked about. So things were like kind of pretty fast, but some of our duration ones just weren't as good. So in the time between announcing it at Laracon AU and then releasing it publicly, which wasn't a very big time gap in between those two things, that's when we rewrote the whole entire thing because we had this like major unlock.
Yeah, I guess.
And one thing Jess mentioned is like we do an insert into a table, and then we do 4 upserts into a different table. And coming back to like Jess's point, like if someone does a GET request to like get your welcome page, now all of a sudden we've introduced like really heavy queries. And so then what we looked at doing is we worked on bringing Redis back into the story to put it in between. So what could happen is the customers, like the GET request doesn't write anything to the database. It just shoots off this stuff to the Redis stream, which was super fast because Redis is all in memory. It's all really quick. And then what we'd do is we'd have another command that would essentially pull stuff off there and chuck it into the database in the background. And that worked really well for really high traffic applications because you could potentially get like database locking if there's too many upserts going in or something like that. And so the Redis ingest actually was a really good equalizer because it meant stuff would go in really quickly. And then the database work was kind of normalized and like a known quantity of like stuff that would like throughput. And that seemed to work really well as well.
And we kind of made it so that was like an optional thing so that like if you've got a smaller app, you don't have to like run this extra process to make it all work. You can literally just install it and you're good to go. And it's just when you need to kind of scale it up that you can use the Redis ingest instead. And if you're not using the Redis ingest, we still do all of the inserts after the response has been sent to the person viewing the website. So it shouldn't slow down the speed of the application. It just means that web worker process is a little bit busy at the end of it before it can go and answer the next request. So it kind of potentially reduces the number of requests you can handle, but not the speed of the requests.
Yeah, I think that's important to know. So everything happens also when you don't use the ingest driver. It happens after the request has been sent back to the user. And if you're using an ingest driver, the whole request will be done, and then later it will be added to the database, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's also was pretty cool. And I think, Tim, you also added this to the framework a little bit. I'm not sure if it was a middleware or a hook where people can now add stuff that's happening now after the request. I think
so there was already some stuff in there. I think the hook we ended up using was something I added a little while ago. But yeah, it's kind of like you can add terminating callbacks. And we are actually using a hook that happens after the terminating hook. So it's kind of like the very last possible moment to hook into things. We're kind of like hacking the hook a little bit. Like it's not meant for what we're doing it for, but it's actually the perfect candidate for it. But don't try it at home.
Yeah, just remember showing it in what's new in Laravel.
When request lifecycle longer than, and I think we say when it's like longer than -1 or something.
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
Yeah, I remembered asking Tim about it because I was mentioning it in Laravel news video. Was Tim like, is this what I think it is? Or it's pretty funny.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Yeah, I'm sorry about my camera. It somehow decided to turn off every couple minutes. No idea why. So if you don't see me, I'm just bringing it up again. Okay, we are already 43 minutes in. Let me check before we go to questions what I have on my list here. So, yeah, I think this is interesting. What are you most proud of with Pulse? Maybe Tim go first and then Jess. Is there one particular thing in general or how you did something that you're most proud of with this project?
Cool. I'm going to pick two, but I'll only talk in detail about one. The two things, I really like how much emphasis we put on kind of reducing the observer effect. So trying to put anything where we had to like do any work, we really tried to push it as far away as possible, like down the execution hook. And I thought that was pretty cool. But the thing that I think I actually like most about Pulse is probably surprising, which is how much we made sure that anything that goes wrong in any of the Pulse code won't, like if an exception gets thrown or something, it won't kind of bubble up and like impact the application. And so we really put emphasis on even like recorders, which, so if say you build your own recorder to capture your own metrics, if you accidentally do something wrong in your package that adds a recorder, like you don't have to like try and catch exceptions or anything. We like handle all that for you. So there's kind of not really any way to throw an exception in anything to do with Pulse that will actually like stop the execution of the code. That was something that we just kind of kept in the back of our heads at every single little entry point. And it's, you know, it's not super exciting, but I actually think it was a pretty cool little detail. So that's me.
Yeah, pretty cool. Jess, anything to add what you're most proud of?
Honestly, it's the data aggregation approach, which was probably, I think, the coolest thing Tim and I have ever, idea we've ever cooked up. And it really just, as I said earlier, it felt like one of those things that I never would have got to on my own. And I don't know if Tim ever would have got to on his own, but we just kept pushing the boundaries and going like, what do you think about this? And then Tim would be like, oh yeah, that's cool. But what if we did this? And then I'm like, oh yeah. And then that's cool. And then that allows us to do this. So yeah, the best thing is the friends you make along the way.
Yeah,
100%.
That's true, as always. I will also link your worldwide meetup talk, and I think the Laracon EU is also out. I think
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, okay. I will link this also in the description. So if you really want to see what Jess and Tim did there, this is a really good talk for you to see what's going on there. I think there's one last thing I really want to talk about before we talk about questions, because we haven't touched this yet, which I think is really special about Puls as well, because it's super easy to add new cards. Why is that the case? Can you talk about this? So what's going on? How did you thought about this process, and how did you make it that simple?
So custom cards was always something that I think we had in the back of our mind that would be cool, but it wasn't like going to be like something we like that came at the expense of like performance or anything else. So with the Redis only approach, custom cards would have been pretty straightforward, because you can create Redis keys. You can just write to a Redis key that doesn't exist and it'll automatically create it. So if you've got a new metric type, you don't have to like run a migration to create the keys or anything like that. You can just do them. With the kind of the second approach, where we had like dedicated tables for each metric type. So each metric had its own migration, and then you had to like tune the indexes specifically for every single metric type. That one felt like that was going to make custom cards not the best from like an authoring experience, because you'd have to kind of really understand what's going on and optimize it yourself. But then when we kind of switched to this other approach, where we're literally just using 3 tables ultimately, but there's 2 tables used for the main kind of aggregated data, adding custom metrics again became just run a command, like just go pulse record the name of your thing and then the value and then what aggregations you want to do, and it'll automatically kind of just work. So yeah, it's kind of just something that kind of kept coming and going as something that seemed more feasible, less feasible, more feasible. And so in the end, it was like, well, this is got like a really good developer story now for building custom cards. And then let's go and try and make the other bits around it work really well, so that it's easy to kind of create the cards. We kind of extracted a lot of Livewire components for all the bits we use, so it was easy to make them kind of fit in with the look and feel, and then just created a lot of nice like helper methods to run the database queries to pull the data out as well as recording it. So if you're just putting it in one of the leaderboard tables or in a graph, there's just like named methods where you just give it the metric name and the aggregates you want, and it'll kind of handle all that for you.
Yeah, I think
another thing that.
Oh yeah.
Sorry. I was just going to say, I think another thing that also really made having custom cards easy was Livewire as well. I hadn't used Livewire before, and I'm used to writing like Vue components or something like this. And if we'd gone down that path, then like custom cards would have to have like build pipelines and all sorts of stuff. But with Livewire, because it's just Blade, you can just throw some HTML in there and it just works. And it just felt like really low friction to be able to do something like that. And so I think the use of Livewire for the dashboard made custom cards, the authoring experience, even better than I would have thought it would have been. So that was really cool.
Yeah, and there was two types of custom cards or two stories we wanted to have work well. So one is custom cards that live in a separate package that you might build and just put out to the community. But the other is just custom cards that you define within your application's code base. They're like specific to your application. And they don't have to relate to the system. They could relate to something about your Eloquent models. So I think I used an example of like ticket sales or something along those lines. So you could, if it was really application specific, you can just throw in some Pulse record things wherever you want them, and then just add a card into your dashboard Blade file. And you don't even have to like create a component for it if you don't want to, because it's Livewire. You could put it all in line if you wanted, or you can extend our components. So it kind of has a good story for both of those scenarios.
Yeah, that's also what I felt immediately when I was trying it out for some videos that I did about it. That creating custom cards was super easy, and that's also what people love about it, because you can put anything on this dashboard that is helpful to you. And with Livewire, like you said, without the build process, which is just so cool to use and so easy. So I really feel like this is also a feature that people love about Pulse. Okay, we have like 10 more minutes. Do you have time for 1 or 2 questions?
Sure.
Definitely.
All right. Let me bring them up here. So guys, if you have any questions, I forgot to mention this. Now is the time. I'm going to check out the comments now. If there's anything you like to ask Jess and Tim, please do this now. In the meantime, maybe Tim or Jess, can you tell us also a little bit about, are there any future plans for Pulse, any new features, or do you feel like the way it currently works is pretty stable and nothing new planned currently?
I've always had a few extra ideas that I'd like to put in there at some point. We do have some interesting and exciting things potentially coming up, but nothing right immediately, and nothing that I can kind of share too much details about at the moment there.
Okay.
I think there's some minor details that we could like polish up in so few APIs that we could like polish a little bit, that we've seen as like we see the community kind of building cards and people using it. We're seeing, this kind of gets repeated in places. Let's like tidy that API up.
Yeah.
But, so there's definitely some like minor polish that we can kind of sprinkle on there.
Yeah, cool. So as I mentioned, I also did 3 or 4 videos about Pulse on Laravel's YouTube channel. So if you want to check out or how to create custom cards, I will also link them in the description. You can all check them out as well. And now let's see. We got, of course, this one. Which you might have.
It's always going to be Vegemite.
Yeah. We definitely we got to the bottom of that on the stage of Laracon.
Yeah,
I'm sure. But,
I think so too. I think it was pretty obvious there, but I of course don't have an opinion about that. Okay, interesting one by Michael. Tim, is that a Nicolas Cage shirt in the style of the Rage logo? What is this?
It is, yes. So,
my God.
Australians understand what that logo underneath is, but that was a TV show, or a music TV show, it still is, called Rage. And yes, that is a Nicolas Cage shirt with the Rage logo.
Yeah, and the image is from the movie with the plane crash. What is it called?
Yeah, tie a ribbon around the old oak tree.
Is it Conair or a
Yeah.
different one?
Yeah, Conair.
Conair, yeah.
Conair, yeah.
So good.
I think it's one of my favorite ones from Nicholas.
Oh, man.
Okay, some other things. Chad, thanks for the great course. Oh my god, my camera is.
You are very, very welcome. That was a lot of fun to do. Yeah, I love NeoVim. So
And
yeah, I
this
was glad to
course
be able to
is
share it.
on Laracast, right?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, for everyone interested, go check it out there. One little thing I have to mention, Taylor mentioned in one of his latest podcasts, a little compliment for you, Chess, which I really felt like was super nice. He said, like, whenever there's something pretty tricky, complicated, where we really have to dig into, he gives this task to you because he knows that you can handle it, and there are not many others that could do this. So I really felt like this was a nice touch. I think it
Thanks,
was one of his
Taylor.
latest podcast interviews. So yeah, thank you, Chess. That's pretty cool.
That's lovely.
Let's see. Your new colleague is also here from Japan.
Hello, Yuta.
Hello.
Do you know how pronounced is it? Ryuda?
It is. I'm going to do my very, very best. I've been asking for his help to pronounce it. Yuta. I think.
Okay, without the R.
I hope
Okay,
that's
then
correct.
I
Yes,
said it
yes,
terribly
there's
wrong in the
no R's.
last video.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so he joined the Laravel team and he's from Japan, which means the time zone is close to where you are. So this means he will work a lot with us. So that's cool. So maybe next time we talk about, with the three of us, about maybe something that you built. So could be the case.
Heck yeah, that'd be awesome.
Okay, there's also an interesting one because we see a lot about SQLite currently. As SQLite is on the rise, are there any known issues with SQLite and Puls? Is this possible currently?
It is possible. So we launched with MySQL only, with a plan to kind of fast follow with Postgres. So we added Postgres, and then I think the main thing with SQLite was there was a lot of people who wanted to use it locally, and were running SQLite locally. So we were like, we said you can disable Pulse locally so that it's not trying to like write to a database or anything like that. But we ended up deciding, all right, let's do SQLite. It's not like the most easy thing to add, just like a new database to Pulse, in that it's not just like turn something on. Because we're doing upsert queries, the syntax is a little bit different for some of the different types of things, because we're not just doing like a Laravel upsert where it's just insert the record or just replace the existing record. We actually want to kind of, if there's a record in there, we want to modify it and incorporate some of the existing data with the new data. So we had to do some custom stuff for that. And then also just the database structure around how we kind of hash. We basically hash the keys that we put in there, because there could be long things like SQL queries. So we kind of hash those. And MySQL and Postgres can both do that for you automatically. So you just give it the data and it does it. But SQLite, we had to do it in PHP before we sent it through. So we ended up adding SQLite support. I've never really run SQLite in production. So I never kind of felt comfortable saying, definitely just go use SQLite for Pulse in production. So yeah, it's not something I would personally recommend, but not because I have any bad experiences. I think the only bad experiences I've had with SQLite is to do with like concurrent writes. So if you had a lot of requests that were all trying to concurrently write to SQLite, I think it like locks pretty quickly and easily in those scenarios. So I would imagine Pulse would kind of make that even worse or more likely to happen. But yeah, if there's strategies around doing that, yeah, I mean, I'm happy to hear if it works amazingly.
Yeah, so if people use it, please share it with us. We're always happy to hear your feedback about those things as well. Okay, let's see if we got one more. And if not, I think we're going to close it. Okay, I think that's it. So thank the both of you for joining me here in the stream and sharing all this amazing stuff about this amazing product. I really learned a lot myself. I had a lot of fun. I hope You at least had a lot of fun because you probably don't learn that much new stuff. But yeah, it was really great having you here. So thank you so much to make this work.
Thank you very much for having us. And I continue to learn new stuff every single day. There's so much I don't know. That's what makes my job so fun.
Oh God, so good. And maybe one last
and
thing.
thank you very much for having
sorry.
us. It's been good to even just like recap doing it, right? And just like have a little bit of a retro and be like
a
how good was that?
therapy.
It was good fun to put together. So yeah, thank you very much. It's been fun.
Yeah, felt a little bit like a little couple therapy as well for you too.
Have fun.
Okay, one last thing. If people want to follow you, where can they find you? I guess you're both on Twitter.
Tim, you go first.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter. If you feel the need to follow me, jump on. I think it's like Tim MacDonald 87 with one M. But just I don't know, just search Tim MacDonald Laravel in Google or something. You'll find me. I got a website. Go there, and you can link to stuff from there. That's the go.
And I am Jess Archer Codes on Twitter /X. Yeah, that's the only real place that I'm not even really active on Twitter, but I try.
Cool. So again, thank you so much. For everyone else, if you want to let me interview any other people from the Laravel team about some specific products or packages, please let me know about this in the comments. I'm already thinking about the next episode here for the series. But yeah, thank you all for joining. Thank you, Jess and Tim again. Have a great rest of the day. And yeah, everybody else, see you around. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
See y'all.
Click.